Turn off your lights. Make sure your doors and windows are locked. Things are about to get spooky. Into the Labyrinth by Sean E. Britten. With a thud, something hammered against the wall, blocking the labyrinth's entrance. Bricks cracked and dust shifted from the ceiling. Another thud and another. The rocks paste holding the bricks together crumbled. Several bricks collapsed and fell inwards. Shafts of sunlight, the first the labyrinth had seen in years, knifed through the Stygian darkness. An iron-headed battering ram broke through the remaining bricks, and a couple of men attacked the gap with hammers until it was large enough for their group to pass through. Alexios, the man in charge, moved through the opening first and scanned their surroundings. The sunlight didn't reach very deep. Dusty, the walls were made of stone with mural carvings into their surfaces. After a short hallway, the labyrinth immediately branched left and right.
"It's open,"
Alexios said.
"Bring the torches."
The men, 8 of them, were mercenaries and tomb raiders, not soldiers. As such, their gear was haphazard and not uniformed. A mixture of beaten brass and scuffed leather, boots or sandals. All the men carried different packs and different weapons depending on their own preferences. Alexios had a short sword and a long, thin dagger on his belt. His second in command, Draken, was shorter and sinewy, and carried a long spear. A couple of brawnier men equipped themselves with heavy war hammers. Draken took a pull of his flask he carried on his belt.
"This is not a place you want to get caught in the dark."
That's why everyone has their own torches and plenty of fuel.
And just hope it's worth it.
You know the rumors as well as I. The king's hoard of gold and silver and jewels hidden somewhere down here in the dark. If 1/10 of the stories are true, we'll all be rich men.
The stories I've heard are of an unsolvable labyrinth, a monster roaming the eternal darkness, and a lot of dead innocents.
Everyone knows the story, Dracon. Not everyone knows about the rumors of treasure.
Decades ago, the now dead king of this island had a wife who fell in love with a white bull. She had an inventor create a wooden cow which she could fit inside in order to consummate that love. It was all very aristocratic. The result of their union was the Minotaur, a hulking horned monstrosity that was half man, half bull, and ate human flesh. Rather than kill the beast, a labyrinth was built to contain it. This labyrinth. And every year, 7 young men and 7 maidens, tributes, were sent into the maze to perish and feed the Minotaur. The sacrifices went on for years. No one ever returned. A few years ago, though, a champion smuggled himself in among the tributes. With the assistance from the king's daughter, he killed the Minotaur and escaped the maze. With the Minotaur dead, and soon the king as well, the labyrinth had been walled up and abandoned. As far as Alexios was aware, the dead Minotaur and sacrificed youths were walled up with it. But rumors persisted that the labyrinth served more than one purpose. That, fearing an eventual uprising, the king had stored a massive haul from his treasury in the labyrinth, where it be protected by his adoptive son. All the men lit torches, orange blazes illuminating the stone wall and the murals that served as a warning of what once laid ahead. The air was stale but breathable. One of the men jostled to the front of the pack, a stocky man named Sulfus, studying a scroll of tan leather. Sketched on the scroll was an extremely rare map of the labyrinth itself. Set out in numerous circles, it contained rings within rings within rings. Lines branched and looped and doubled back on themselves, many ending in dead ends. Even with torches, one could easily lose themselves for days within the maze. In darkness, it would be inescapable.
Which way do we go to start?
Sophus had spent many hours already mapping their route.
To the right to begin.
Alexis and Darkin followed Sophus into the maze with the others trailing behind them. The walls along the outside edge of the labyrinth curved gently. The glow of the sunlight rapidly shrank away behind them. The men could only travel in single file with their weapons, armor, and torches. All the passages and doorways looked identical. Earth and stone closed in on them overhead. Alexios could feel the weight of all that rock pressing down on them, pressing them in. Claustrophobic. Like being buried alive. Nothing stirred within the labyrinth, and everything was totally silent. At least until Hesiod started to sing.
Well, the girls from Aegina, none could be finer, and you'll never go wrong in Eretria.
Hesiod's voice boomed through the enclosed space.
And the ladies from Sparta, you know they try harder to compete with all of the men.
Hesiod walked at the back of the pack, a large muscular man with a warhammer propped over his shoulder. He constantly sang or hummed or whistled in times like this. Still, it caused the others to jump, startled.
Would you shut the hells up?
Firo said, the second hammer wielder. Another big but foul-tempered man noted by his shock of dark red hair.
Silence back there! Sophos needs to concentrate unless you want to wander these stone halls until all our lights go out.
Hesiod relented, but he could be heard humming under his breath. Pyros looked tense, and he wasn't the only one. Sophus, for his part, barely acknowledged them.
Left here.
They hadn't been traveling long when they came across the first skeleton. Alexis bent over to inspect it. All the clothes and flesh had long since rotted away. The skull was smashed as if from an enormous blow. Bones laid scattered around the passage.
Some of the bones are missing. Looks like they are pulled to pieces.
The Minotaur ate human flesh. The sacrifices.
Alexis went to pick up the top half of the skull. A squirming, fury body tremored out of the back of it. Disturbed, the rat regarded them with terror. It took off down the labyrinth ahead of them, squeaking until it disappeared into the darkness.
I thought nothing could get in here or out.
I guess rats can always find a way.
Every once in a while, the maze would come to an intersection in a round room. These were just wide enough for the 8 men to stand in a circle, unlike the corridors where they had to walk in single file. Doorways led off in various directions from the intersections. Everywhere Sophus went, they passed doorways into other passages, as well as moved around bends and corners. Sophus kept them from running into dead ends. At a couple of points, they found water leaking through the roof. It seeped from the stone and ran down the walls. Alexis tasted and found it was fresh. With all the twists and turns, the endless circling, it was impossible to picture where they were in relation to the geography above ground. There must have been a lake or a pond or a river above them that slowly wormed its way through the soil and rock. In the lightless world of the labyrinth, the fresh water fed some kind of thick, spongy moss and masses of fungi. Alexis could see sections had been gnawed on, no doubt by rats. Water pooled in places and then seeped away.
How big is this damn thing?
Another one of the men, Theo, complained.
We've been walking here for what feels like hours.
We must pass through the very center of the labyrinth before we can reach the other side, where the king's treasure is supposedly stored.
Sophus said. Theo wore a long sword down his spine, long dark hair tied off, ran alongside the weapon. Scratching at his neck with his free hand, the other occupied by his torch. The sellsword looked nervous.
I feel eyes watching us. from the walls. From all these damned doorways.
A few others laughed, but largely to dispel their own fear. Regardless of whether they felt they were being watched by anything more than rats, the labyrinth was oppressive. An endless tomb full of doorways and tunnels. Alexis saw another broken skull laying against one of the walls, looking practically ancient. Eventually, under Sulphus' direction, the 8 of them reached the very center of the labyrinth. Time stretched and snapped under the earth, against all the sameness, but the walk had taken hours. Much like the other intersections, the center was another circular room, but much, much larger, with a dome roof. A dozen empty doorways ringed around the room.
This is it, the heart of the labyrinth, home of the Minotaur.
Home indeed. Numerous pieces of oversized furniture dotted the cavern. More skeletons occupied this space as well. Skulls smashed and bones snapped open to give access to the marrow. Scores of them had been swept to the side of the room. And then, in the middle of the room, Alexis found it.
Ah, look! The skeleton of the Minotaur itself.
Alexis said. Although the fur and flesh had rotten away, the bones were recognizable of those of the Minotaur. Largely complete, it was noticeably bigger than any human skeleton. The creature must have been over 8 feet tall and huge. It would have had to move through the labyrinth, halls stomping over, squeezing through the passages. But it would have been inescapable in them too. Totally impossible to get past. Its rib cage, its arms and pelvis looked human, if overly large, but its legs ended in bony hooves and its head was especially huge and disformed. A bull skull with massive carved horns, but with the teeth of a predator.
All this built to contain it, but it died and rotted like anything else.
What are those marks on the bones?
The Minotaur skeleton was mostly in one piece, but various markings covered the bones, pitting and scraping. Alexis looked closer in the firelight. Dark stains covered the stone floor under the skeleton.
They look like teeth marks. Must have been the rats.
They look a little big for rats.
I claim the head. It would look wonderful above my hearth.
They decided to rest in the center and recuperate before continuing on the second half of the maze. Pyrrhus broke up some furniture to make a fire. Hesiod sang to himself. Draken sat down heavily and took a pull from one of his flasks. The others drank from water or wineskins and ate salted meat from their packs along with Typhon. The group's cook tried to prepare something better.
You're telling me you don't feel it?
Theo said.
Something is in here, watching us.
Shut up, Theo, you damn coward.
Piero said. Alexius ignored them both. Theo's words and the endless passage of the labyrinth itself were working on all their minds. No fresh air, no sunlight. The dark and the weight and the silence. Smoke started to fill the dome space. It eddied and the torches sometimes moved and snapped. Curious, as there was no breeze inside the buried maze, unless bodies in motion might push air in front of them, slipping through the corridors and becoming tiny currents. Alexis looked towards one of the doorways orbiting the center space and thought he saw movement. A glimmer of white, pale as a fish's belly or a clean sheet. That was only there for a split second, and then it vanished back into oblivion.
Seeing ghosts?
Draken wandered over and seemed to read something in his leader's expression.
Ghosts, yes, must be. The ghosts of all those sons and daughters, fed into this maze, fed to this beast.
Within the labyrinth, no sense of night and day existed. No set mealtimes, no time to rest. Alexis gave his men what he thought would be a sufficient time and then told them to pack up and get moving again. They left the fire to burn as there was nowhere for it to spread. Some fixed and relit their torches. Sophus had never put down his map and led the way to one particular doorway. Theo looked hesitant about going any further, but didn't protest. Humming and whistling and occasionally singing to himself, Hesiod took up a position at the rear, having roped the Minotaur's skull to his pack. Alexos carried it along with the rest of his equipment. The horns swung from side to side, occasionally scraping the stone walls. Left, right, right. Sophus guided them down one of the passages. They passed numerous other doorways and dead ends, and numerous bones. They hadn't been moving long, however, when they came to a sudden stop. The dead end didn't appear because of a mistake in Sophus' navigation, but instead due to a collapse in the ceiling, with rubble clinging to the passage.
What is this?
Alexo said.
Looks like part of the ceiling has fallen.
Sophus said.
I will have to figure out a way around this.
The stalking men studied his scroll again by firelight. They should only need a short diversion to get them around the collapse, but in a maze as complicated as the labyrinth, Sophus took no chances. He carefully marked the new route. Backtracking for a few minutes, they continued along the other path, but it wasn't long before they came to another blockade.
More rumble.
Alexos said.
Perhaps this part of the labyrinth collapsed.
But this place was built to last 100 years.
Sophus said, sounding disturbed.
Could we dig our way through?
Draken asked.
No. No, if it has collapsed, then digging could cause more of the roof to fall in. I'll find another way.
The 8 of them backtracked again, turning around awkwardly. Sophus, Alexos, and Draken moved again to the front, while Hesiod remained at the back. They had to return almost all the way to the center according to Sophus, and would have to go a long way around to reach the far side of the labyrinth.
While you live, shine, have no grief at all.
Hesiod sang to himself, his voice carrying through the stone walls.
Life exists only for a short while, and time demands its toll.
Hells, would you shut your stupid mouth, Hesiod?
Pyrrhus snapped. To their surprise, Hesiod went silent with no argument, nor did he continue to whistle or hum. The others shuffled along, listening to their own scraping feet, the crackling of the flames, and their breathing. Finally, one of the men, Timotheus, glanced back.
Hey, stop! Where has Hesiod gone?
Timotheus said.
What are you talking about?
Hesiod is gone. He was right behind me.
The 7 of them went up and down the line. Hesiod had disappeared. Big as he was, his equipment, his torch had all vanished in total silence, without any of them noticing.
Hesiod! Hesiod! If this is some kind of jest, then none of us are amused!
Alexo shouted.
We'll have to find him.
Dracon said.
We can't split up.
Sophus warned them. Alexos and Draco squeezed past the other. Alexo lightly touched the palm of his sword. Undeniable fear etched itself on all the men's faces. Even Pyrrhus, as he grunted something about Hesiod playing pranks. Moving carefully, they backtracked through the maze once more. Using torches, they checked around corners and through doorways. Eventually, Alexios found a dark streak along one of the walls. It looked black in the firelight. Alexios tested it with his finger, finding it wet, and brought the finger to his face.
It's blood. Fresh.
Alexios said.
There's something in here with us.
Dracon said.
I told you! I told you we were being watched!
Theo said.
Stow it.
Hesiod?
Pios yelled.
Hesiod, show yourself!
Pyrrhus' cries echoed away into the warren of the corridors unanswered. They fanned out, weapons ready and torch raised. Sophus hung back, holding the map.
He's yours.
Don't lose the path.
Anything?
Alexius shouted.
Nothing.
Timotheus, the man who first noted Hesiod's absence, shouted back. They reconvened in the corridor with Sophus, heads shook angrily. None of them had found any sign of Hesiod. Alexis' eyes scanned the group in a flickering light and immediately noticed something.
Where's Timotheus?
Alexius said.
What?
Pyrrhus said, and they all looked around themselves.
Timotheus! Where is he?
Alexius' voice rose.
Timotheus! Timotheus!
By the gods.
Sophus muttered. Again, the 6 of them spread along the tunnel to search for Timotheus. No one went off alone this time, however. They all stayed in with sight of the others. A potent mix of fear and important rage swelled through the group. Finally, they spotted an orange glow that didn't belong to one of their own torches down one of the stone passageways. Alexos and Dracon went to check it out and found another torch laying on the ground, still burning. There were no other signs of violence or struggle. Just beyond was one of the round 4-way intersections.
Is it Timotheo's torch?
Dracon asked.
It must be.
Alexios said. Alexios recovered the torch and returned to the others. The men were dead, or unrecoverable. Assuming they'd been taken by someone or something that actually knew the maze, they could be anywhere by now.
Keep going. Back this way.
Huddled together, they moved down the passage. They were sure to watch their backs and to keep their weapons raised at every side branch. Soon they came to another pile of rubble that blocked their progress.
No. No. This wasn't here before. This is the way we came.
Sophus said.
That's it. Let's get back to the Labyrinth Center. At least there's no way to sneak up on us there.
Sophus quickly plotted a route. They didn't run into any more blockage or trouble on their way back, but now, like Theo, Alexis could feel them being watched. He glimpsed pale flashes of white far back in the shadows in some passages. He resisted the urge to go after them. They came across no sign of the missing 2 men. When they reached the dome's center of the labyrinth, nothing had changed. Embers burning low on the fire they left behind. Smoke stained the air.
Get that fire started again. Save the torches and burn whatever you can.
Pyrrhus and Typhon grew the fire again. The 6 of them fanned out, watching the doorways. A dozen of them ringed the space, however, all alike and empty as the sockets of the skulls scattered throughout the room.
What is it? The Minotaur is dead. What took them?
I don't know. Something else has taken over down here.
Alexos pulled his pack off and stared at the horned skull he had strapped to it.
How could anything survive?
The water leaking from the ceiling in some places. The fungi. Maybe eating the rats, if it's good enough at hunting in the dark.
And now it's hunting us.
To be continued. This story was narrated by 242 and guest narrators. Credit mentioned by appearance. Not all narrators will appear in both parts. Alexos, played by Phoenix Fire. Dracon, played by Limited Stories. Sophus, played by Jimmy Horror. Hesiod, played by Cajun Cryptid. Pyrrhus, played by Gamma Akatabi. Theo, played by Evil Outcast. Timotheus, played by As the Raven Dreams. Typhon, played by Beaky. And with that, my friends, our time together is coming to an end. As always, I would like to thank the writer, Sean E. Britten, for letting me read this story. and to the other narrators who lent me their voices to bring this story to life. I do not have 8 male voices to do this with. If you don't want to miss part 2, please make sure you subscribe and turn that bell to all notifications. And if you enjoyed this story, please hit that like button and make sure it feels it. And of course, you can share this video with anyone who might enjoy this collaboration as well. If you'd like to help in other ways, I do have Patreon and YouTube memberships, where for $1 a month you get early access to the audios and videos. There are other tiers that get you other bonuses as well, but I also have merch, PayPal, and buy me a coffee if that interests you as well. And of course, last but never least, I would love a comment, but I gotta get you that Sunday word first. On screen right now is everyone who wrote me a sentence with 2 weeks ago's Sunday word. This video got pushed back a week, so things got a bit weird. Thank you guys as always. I really look forward to these. Now, on to this Sunday's word, which is station. STATION. So if you're interested in being in next week's video/photo, write me a sentence with the word station and you'll get that. Or if you don't want to, I just love comments in general. But as always guys, thank you for watching and listening. It really means the world to me. And I really hope you enjoy the content I put out here for you. Sleep tight and don't let 42 bite.